All right, Rich Askintowicz, Operations Director, Fanatics Events. How are you, man?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for coming. So tell us a little bit about your background. How did you end up in this crazy events industry?
You know what? It's not to go on a long story, but after Hurricane Andrew in '92, I had just graduated from University of Miami, had my first job in Fort Lauderdale, and everything went away after the hurricane. So I moved back up to Connecticut and got a bartending job because the economy was tough at the time, and it was the bottom of below the bottom floor of an office building. Long story short, the company was called Warrantech. They were an extended warranty company. Those guys used to come to the bar all the time. They really liked my work ethic, and I'm like, I have a marketing degree. I'm just out of college, and long story short, I got hired right away. I was in their automotive division. So they had two divisions. They did extended warranties for consumer products, and then they did extended warranties in the automotive industry. And they were heavily involved in trade shows, exhibiting.
Wow.
So I was, I had no clue about trade shows or anything like that. So the consumer side, they participated in CES. Automotive side was the NADA show. So a few months after I started, I had to go to my first trade show. I've never been before, at the Moscone Center in San Francisco.
We know it well.
And, oh yeah, you guys do a lot of events there. You do great work there as well. Went to the trade show, and the CEO walked me around because I had never been to an event before. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. Trade show industries. I couldn't wait for the other events that we went to, and did the NADA multiple years. We did CES on the consumer side, and some smaller automotive aftermarket events for the warranties. And a bunch of my friends worked for a company called Reed Exhibitions, one town over from me in Connecticut. And I really, really loved the trade show industry. Even though I was an exhibitor, I was very interested in the whole setup. I'm OCD, ADD, like very love organization. So I spoke to a bunch of my friends and ended up getting hired, left the company, and went to Reed Exhibitions. And I started off in sales, working on manufacturing events, traveling all over the country. Eventually, years later, moving up from a sales executive to a director, I worked a lot with operations. I loved the operations part, and went into operations after 13 years in sales, basically. And it just led to everything from being an exhibitor to selling booth space to putting the events together. So everything just evolved over the years, and I've been doing operations now probably for the last 15, 16 years. And again, I had no clue about the events industry. And there's something, as you know, there's an event for absolutely everything. And right. I was blessed working with Reed, and where I'm at now is I worked on manufacturing events, but then we delved into, I worked on food events, security events, fan events. So it's just an exciting industry, and it's a great industry to get into because you learn so much on the business side of things. I mean, I would recommend anyone if they can get into the events industry too, because you learn so much.
Well, speaking of working a lot, at the peak at Reed, and I don't know if it was pre-COVID or even afterwards, like how many events a year are we talking about?
Reed at minimum 40 events a year.
Yeah. Just you, or that's what Reed did?
Well, Reed globally, 300 events a year worldwide. They're based out of the UK.
Right.
So they had 40 offices all over the world, over 300 events. We produced 40 in the US alone, and we had produced some events in Mexico and Puerto Rico as well.
Right. How did you find, when you're at Reed and the number of events grew, scaling talent and scaling and who was the next Rich and who was the next this person? How did you find the best way to scale good talent to run those events?
Well, it was the leadership. The leadership. What was great about the leadership working there at Reed and who I worked with is they gave us a lot of autonomy to grow, and they also, they picked our brains on, the right people, suggestions on how to produce the events, and as the events grew and you had to bring on more people, if we were all going to work together, like Mike Grant, amazing leader, would get us involved,
right,
in making sure that when you're meeting prospective employees or partners to work with us, is that they fit in. There's certain cadence that they follow and just work ethic. What it comes down to is work ethic, because when you're in the events industry and you're working on multiple events, you need to be able to make decisions quickly. You have to be as accurate as possible, and you have to be detail oriented as well. So it's, we had brought people in from the outside as well, but also they had a great plan where individuals moved up from different departments to get them into operations. I mean, there's no way I could have went into operations without having that experience of being an exhibitor and being in sales as well.
Because you saw what didn't work when you were the client, effectively. You're now at Fanatics Events.
Yes.
Huge brand.
Yes.
Michael Rubin.
Yes.
What's going on at Fanatics? I know you had Fanatics Fest and you had plans for some other stuff this year that got curtailed, but what's the vision here? What does Mr. Rubin want to do with this entity?
I'll build a brand, but also basically create a Comic-Con for the sports industry, because there's nothing in the sports industry that gathers passionate fans together to celebrate all aspects of sports and mostly collectibles as well. And that's big. So, at Fanatics, we have Fanatics Events, but you have Fanatics Authentics, Fanatics Collectibles, Tops, trading cards. The collectible market is huge, and it's just growing. You have Fanatics Sports Bet Gaming as well. And with Fanatics Commerce, the websites and all the licenses that Fanatics has with all the sports entities out there, everything's virtual. It's like, how do you get everyone together to celebrate the industry?
Right.
And, we didn't know what to expect when we were producing this event. And I'm blessed because I work with the individuals that founded New York Comic-Con and did all the other Comic-Con events. So they know what it takes to build the passion and to bring fans to the event. How do you put an event like that together? And no one knew what to expect, because you're thinking you're doing something Fanatics. Fanatics, you have all the apparel on the website.
Right.
You can, Topps baseball cards. Basically, what we wanted to do is the largest trading card event, collectibles event, but also surrounded by all the partners. So you have MLB, NFL, WWE, MLS, NHL, NBA. You have all those areas, all those groups have it as an anchor, but also you have Lids, which is part of Fanatics, Mitchell & Ness, and like a lifestyle brand. So you're bringing everything together. And then we had autographing and photo ops. You bring all the athletes, and it was just one big celebration.
But you mentioned Comic-Con, and you were involved in Comic-Con for many years.
Yes.
And then you're sitting there at the drawing board with a blank piece of paper, and you said, "We're going to do this Fanatics Fest, and we're going to do it at Javits, and we're going to have 100,000 people or whatever." What was the goal, and how did it go? It got great publicity.
Unbelievable.
What kind of attendance numbers did you have? I mean, year one.
Oh, over 70,000.
That's great.
Over 70,000 fans. The NPS scores from both the exhibitors and the attendees, I've never seen anything like that before.
That's fantastic.
All the years that I've been in the trade show business or the events business, the feedback that we got, the numbers that we got, it was just amazing.
A Comic-Con has some big names in that industry.
Yes.
I don't recognize a lot of those names because I'm not in the comic world. Fanatics Fest had some huge names that I recognize a lot of them. Like, what was the difference as far as, and we'll get into the security side. You've been, you're the operations director, but you've had a heavy hand in security, for a number of different events. Explain the difference. Like, what were the unique challenges of FanFest with those names, the Bradys and, others that were there, compared to the Comic-Con talent that you used to have to deal with? Honestly,
the Comic-Con talent, we had just as much A-level talent in the entertainment industry as we did in the sports industry. The thing is, at Fanatics Fest, we had a lot more top talent and current and former talent as well. a lot more, almost 300 athletes basically coming to the event.
Right.
You know, you have your Tom Brady, Derek Jeter, Big Papi, Red Sox. But you know, you had all the wrestlers. You had Cody Rhodes. You had Hulk Hogan. Dana White was there from UFC.
Right.
Triple H. Rob Gronkowski. I know I said Brady already. Old school players like a Jerry Rice. Ozzie
What
Smith.
challenge does that present? You know, you've got talent movements. Clearly, there's that challenge. But like from a crowd management perspective, what kind of challenges did you run up against?
Well, the challenge there's two parts of it. So similar to what we did on Comic-Con. So when you're at the Javits Center and you have all these fans congregating to the Javits Center, the first thing that local authorities want, like 10th Precinct, NYPD, is to get everyone off the streets as soon as possible.
Right.
Because not to sound poorly or anything, but when you have a huge fan event at a venue like that, that's a soft target.
Right.
And the main thing is to get everyone in safely and efficiency, but also you want to make sure you're doing it where you're making sure that nothing gets through that can go boom or bang,
right,
basically within the venue. So what we did is we replicated what we had done at our other events at Reed, like Comic-Con and Star Wars, and in order to bring the fans in efficiently and quickly, we utilized with Stratoscope. The first thing we did is we bought in the Evolve units.
Yep.
And the thing is, we positioned them a certain way where we sent the fans, we sent a whole plan on how the fans are going to enter the building, so we can control everything. And then with the number of fans that show up, obviously we have multiple dual lane Evolve units. You get 3,400 people in an hour. We were able to get everyone in quickly and safely. But then we also utilized the open gates back a house, because what's happening is that you're going to bring talent from the entertainment industry or athletes as well, and they want to be safe as well, even though they're coming in through the back. And the challenge was, and we worked well with the Javits, is we were able to bring the fans in through the marshalling garage as opposed to bringing them off of 34th and 11th. But bringing them in the back, we also set up open gates, so as the talent came through with their entourage, they're like, oh, wow, this is really a safe event, which it is. I mean, utilizing the open gates, the Evolve units, we've also utilized K9s and metal detectors as well, because it's not only getting the fans in and getting the talent in the back. The big thing is the exhibitors as well.
Right.
Those that are presenting, because on a lot of consumer events outside of a B2B event, a lot of the exhibitors, they hand carry their inventory in.
Yep.
And the thing is like we need to get them in quickly. So for years at my previous organization, we found it was efficient utilizing the open gates, the Evolve units, along with K9s and X-ray machines, just to get everyone in quicker and safer and accurate. Because I always look at it going to how we used to bring fans into the event. You know, it was a slower process with the weapons detection units that we used in the past. And I talk about it going from toll booths on the I-95 to Easy Pass.
Well, and we liken it to when it was, you know, the old school walk-through metal detector. It really, what we were saying is everybody's a bad guy.
Yes.
Until you clear this process, which was onerous. And then when we shifted to this advanced technologies, we're able to say, you know what, everybody's a good guy. Because you can flow through, right? And then if we get those alerts, we can put that person through the extra element.
Yes.
Right? And so it was a change. It's a complete change in the thinking.
It's an education process too, because we not only had to educate, we promoted to our exhibitors what every year on our events when I was doing those other events, and even for this event this past August, it's what are you doing for security?
Yeah.
And it wasn't only like the fans, but it's the handlers, it's the movie studios, it's the leagues, it's what are your safety protocols?
Right.
And obviously you can't divulge everything, but being able to present them with such an amazing platform of what we're doing and how we're getting everybody in, it shows that we take it to heart, and we want everybody safe. But also ups our level compared to other events.
Yeah.
Just like when I worked at Reed, I think what makes Reed stand out on the B2B side and the consumer side of the industry is how they take safety and security so seriously.
Right. Let's shift a little bit. Talk to me, think back to your toughest day in the industry. That event that just didn't go well, that event that really challenged you professionally, what happened? Share some of the insights of, the challenges of that toughest day you've had.
Well, if I can go, it might be a little bit wordy if you don't mind. It actually has to do with an event that we actually did post-COVID 2 years ago, 2022 in Anaheim. It's the first time that we got to work with Stratoscope and Ingresso Tech full-fledged. Challenge was our partner, major movie studio, and they had a lot of demands, which we totally agreed with. And what the challenge was, they wanted to replicate what we did in New York. And in Anaheim, basically what they wanted to do is set up a perimeter around the outside of the Anaheim Convention Center. Now, unlike Javits, that has an inner roadway that you can set a perimeter, and there's like 2 or 3 ways to get in, Anaheim Convention Center, I think we had 11 entry points.
Yeah.
And we had never done anything like that before in Anaheim. We saw other events that were able to do this, but we were back in our office. We're like, how the heck are we going to do this? And then through different partnerships, we reached out to, and I'm not saying it because I'm with you, but we reached out with Stratoscope. And the thing about Anaheim, so when we at my previous organization, we did a lot of our events in the same venues, Venetian, LVCC, the Javits.
But more of those events you owned.
Yes.
This event you were producing.
It's a JV, yeah.
Right.
It's a JV, but the thing was, it's the last time we had executed an event in Anaheim was 7 years prior. And we don't have the relationships we have with the local authorities that we have at the, outside of the contract security companies that we hire, but the local authorities, first responders. So we bought in Stratoscope basically to run everything nuts and bolts, even down to ordering the walkie-talkies, which I don't know if you know what a pain it can be, because there's certain contract security companies that have those, others do not, and it's just more work for us. And we're worried about producing the best fan event for this or for our partner that would each time we produce this event, it has to be better than the previous one. But the whole security protocol, it's a job in itself. You need like 4 people. So the other challenge was, at the time, even though COVID was over with, they still required vaccination checks and masks. So it's like, how do we do this, produce the event, the content, going down to ordering electrical. We bought in Stratoscope, and we learned a lot from them. So working with Calvin, Anthony Galea.
But touch on those lessons learned, because not only you touched on COVID, you touched about masks. This particular event, people show up in
costumes.
And so what were some of the lessons learned out of this, when you look back?
Well, the lessons learned, first of all, I learned from working with Calvin on creating, with the perimeter, how to create something where it's not going to upset, like, the workers, too, because we had to worry about the workers. There wasn't 2 entrances. We had 7, 9 entrances there. What we did learn is that in order to staff those, you would have to have bodies. Yep. And especially when you're working on the weekend, let's talk about costs. You're looking at overtime costs. What we learned was we worked with, you guys had, our Stratoscope, Ingresso Tech had recommended, we worked with, oh God, I can't think of the name of the company. We had the camera.
Yep.
The camera system.
Unified Command.
Sorry about that.
Yep.
So with Unified Command, what we did was we learned, which we'd never done before, so they strategically placed cameras all over the venue. And what we learned was we set up a command center, and the command center not only had our employees, you guys as well, but all the local assets in one room. And we were able, like, I basically learned that I could run an event operationally from sitting in the command center, utilizing the cameras and the communication.
Right.
Because the lessons learned when we had done the event in Anaheim previously, we had challenges with all the fans showing up, and they were staying, the perimeter
Yep.
of the Anaheim Convention Center. Well, Anaheim Police Department came after us because cars couldn't get through.
Right. You have private entities that you were screwing
Yes,
with.
because you have the hotels, you have
Yep.
the Marriott and the Hilton over there. So by utilizing the cameras and being able to flip where fans were coming from, we were able to get everyone in much quicker, safely. But the camera system and creating that whole command center, it just alleviated any issues we had because we didn't have to have the bodies do it, but we were able to.
But touch on that, because you grew up in an industry where you're basically the firefighter.
Yes.
You were running around with 1 or 2 or maybe 3 radios, and you're
Yes.
putting out fires. And while you're dealing with this fire, there could be 3 behind you that you can't even see. Once you experienced, and I think the first, maybe the model was what Javits Center has, and the camera coverage they have. But then when we talked about Anaheim, and we talked about having that ability to pull an operations center together that size and decision making, it's a real change from an operator's perspective.
Oh, very much so.
Because I got to tie you to a chair now
Yes.
instead of let you run around.
Instead of running around. But you know what it was? It was much more proactive because before we had the camera systems, we're running around and we don't hear about, we have an issue with crowd control over on the east side of the building. You only hear about that when it's happening. But with the camera systems, they were able to see everything ahead of time. Hey, this is happening. Let's take care of this now. And
Well, if my team's there, they better see it before it starts happening.
they saw
You
it
gotta be
before it
preventative.
happened. But that's where the courtesy teams came in
Right.
because we never used courtesy teams before. And what the courtesy teams were, we had them roving around various parts of the venue. Now, when we went back to Anaheim, they had a whole new building as well that
Right.
we had to manage as well. So bringing in the courtesy teams and placing them in strategic areas, it's not like they're just sitting there waiting for us to call saying, hey, we're worried about this crowd, or we have this celebrity coming,
Right.
coming through. They were proactive on absolutely everything. But what was great about the courtesy teams during setup, they went around to all of our staff, all the exhibitors, and introduced themselves so they knew exactly who they were when they saw them roving around, especially in the registration area. Hey, if there's an issue, you let us know. Even if you think it's the most ridiculous ask, just come to us. And that takes a lot off of my plate,
Right.
or off the team's plate as well. So we learned a lot with utilizing the open gates, the evolve units, the courtesy teams, and unified command with the cameras. But more importantly is setting up a centralized location, an operations command post, basically, where everyone's there. So you have someone from EMT, the fire department, local police department, the building security, contract security, the canine company,
Right.
and then us, staff as well, because you're able to communicate in real time when you're setting it up, as opposed to making, you have your telephone tree and you're making multiple phone calls to people.
It doesn't work in this day and age, especially when you're looking at 25,000 plus per day coming to an event, or 45,000, whatever the number is. What it really does, though, Rich, in my opinion, and we developed this concept really from the years of experience with the Super Bowl, and saying, okay, and I dragged Jim Steig off of running around with 3 radios and putting out fires into a room with video and saying, look, decision makers have to be together, because we can be efficient if we can look each other in the eye and say, our recommendation is this. No, you didn't think about these 3 things. Okay, now my recommendation is this, and we can make good decisions together and become more strategic. Because if you're running around putting out fires, you're very tactical, right? You're solving, some VP's access control problem when you've got, 5,000 people in a long line around the block and nobody knows about it.
Yeah, and having to get them in, because that's the thing, especially the local authorities. We need to get these individuals out of the public space
Right.
and into the building as soon as possible.
Well, and it brings a lot of confidence to those local officials.
Yeah, very much
They
so.
see that you got a plan and what you're operating,
And
they don't knee jerk and try and shut something down that doesn't need to be.
And they, you know what? And I'm going to be honest. When we were first implementing and working, even at the Javits at other venues, when we were bringing in working with the Evolve units, everyone was skeptical at first.
Right.
And it's an education process. It's an education process not only to the exhibitors and the attendees coming into the venue, what you spoke about before with the metal detectors. Everyone's a suspect, but with the Evolve and Open Gates, you just walk through. That's an education process. It's an education process with the venues and the partners and the local authorities as well.
Right.
And we saw that in London too. When we worked together in London, there was a little bit of pushback, but it seems like after you build it up, you give them examples. When they see it after the first day, it's like an aha moment, and next thing you know, we're making new friends. But by being able to do this, working with you guys and working with, what do you guys call it? And we spoke about it in London. Is it the invisible security net?
We are the invisible net.
Yeah, the invisible net. And as you know, I studied you guys forever. It's being able to bring those assets to different venues and being able to present it to them for the first time. The more backup that we have and the more case studies that we can show to them, it's been getting a lot easier to implement because, there was, like I said, there was pushback a few years ago. Now it seems like with everything that's going on in the world,
right.
What you really need to have when you're producing an event, yes, you have your plan, your marketing plan, how you're going to drive attendance, how you're going to sell sponsorships and booth space. But I think that, and everyone will tell you that the most important thing is what's your security plan? How are you going to keep us all safe?
Right. And
you need to create something that has a lot of thought, has a lot of detail, and to be able to back it up. It's almost like now I can show a before and after. Before, this is how we produced events on the security side, and this is how we've done it after.
Well, and especially thinking about your new role with the entity you're with Fanatics, which is already a huge brand. At the end of the day, what we're doing is protecting that brand's risk.
Exactly.
Reputational risk, image, and financial risk.
Yes.
Right? Because you're going to invest X amount into this event. You want those attendees to walk away and go, I got to see Tom Brady and it was fantastic, or I got to this trading area or whatever, and not talk about those lines or not talk about the pain of getting in and out of the place.
No, exactly. And it's protecting the Fanatics fan, but also you have to remember the facilities we have. Javits has a brand.
Right.
We're protecting their brand as well.
Right.
And if we want the certain talent, it wasn't just athletes. It was, we had Replica 4040 Club,
right,
in conjunction with Jay-Z, with Fanatics Sports Bet Gaming, and you had a lot of talent in there from the music industry as well, and from Hollywood. It's by implementing the security protocols we did in conjunction with Stratoscope, they're willing to come back again. And that's the most important thing because we want them to come back as well.
For sure. Looking forward 3 to 5 years, what do you think is going to be the risk that we're going to face from an events perspective, from a security perspective? What, if you had to forecast the problem that we're going to face, what is it?
I think as certain events become they're more in the media. It could be pop culture. It could be sports. It's a lot of our events can be similar to like the Super Bowl. With that type of media attention or public attention, I think it brings the bad actors to the forefront. Those bad actors that want to make a statement. So it's, you have to think, what's going on out there. Do we need to go to facial recognition technology? Something that's not going to make individuals uncomfortable, but it's what else can you do to push out that perimeter, communicate a little bit more. I mean, you cannot over-communicate enough without making anyone nervous. But I think the next May, using around the building drones where you can for surveillance. And again, the facial recognition technology, I think, is going to be huge as well.
Are we getting over the facial recognition hump where people were like, oh, it's intrusive, etc.? And now I feel like, we're seeing it at airports. Delta's, and a couple other airlines are using digital ID and digital pass. And, look, at the end of the day, we're opening our phone every day with our face.
Yes.
So are we getting over that hump?
Well, the thing is, when you go through TSA, what they'll do is they'll do the facial recognition. They'll say, hey, we're not retaining that data.
Sure.
And I think that's the most important thing. If
sure.
we can implement something like that, where we're not saying sharing it with anybody, but we're not going to use that information to, sell them anything
right.
or share it. I think it just makes you feel a little bit safer. Also, you can use that facial technology, and I think it's done at the Browns Stadium as well, as opposed to me pulling out cash or cashless, pulling out my credit card, using my facial recognition where I can go up and buy a soda or a hot dog.
Right.
It makes every life so much easier, and that's more. To me, that's more secure because I've had my identity stolen with my credit card, even with the chips. It just seems like with the facial recognition technology, it's a lot more biometric technology, whatever you call it. It's a lot more secure, but also it improves the fan experience.
Well,
but if if I know I'm going down to Disney World with my daughter, and they're using, they already have the Open Gates, the Evolve units, they have a facial recognition system. I don't want to bring my daughter anywhere that's not safe. I'm totally into it. And that's what it comes down to, especially with the fan events that we do. Fanatics event is a huge family event. And we want to make sure that that everyone feels safe and comfortable. And I mean, what do you see with the future challenges on the security side for trade show events industry?
Well, I think we talked about the biometrics and we've implemented digital ID in San Francisco with Salesforce, and it streamlines the registration process. And this year, in its second year out, 70% opt-in rate of tech attendees, who are probably the most skeptical of all. So if we're seeing that, that's I think we're getting past this. It's obtrusive. There's all of the 10-year-old arguments around it. I think we're getting there to where we can use it as a benefit to the guest experience. My entry process, if I use it in lieu of a credit card for purchasing, but I also think that from a overall security posture, I want you to know that the person that assaulted that person on the corner, looks like this, that, another thing, so that from an investigation and a pursuit perspective, we have that data. And we're not using the face. We're using identifiers around it. So I don't want to get into the details around biometrics, but I think we're getting there.
But I think the next step, too, on both the consumer and the B2B events, I think it comes down to our badges, the registration badges as well. And I spoke about this in the past. A lot of times you just have a badge with like a barcode on it. I think you need to go one step further, and I think that's going to be important for the events going down the road, is that somehow that your credentials that you're wearing has to be linked with you somehow. Is it either through biometrics or something that pops up when you scan in, is that your picture pops up, because we saw that on the jewelry shows that they worked on. I mean, that, and then
it's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference, especially, working on jewelry shows in the past. But these fan events as well, we're a for-profit company. You don't want these individuals switching badges around. You have a 3-day badge. You can show up for one day on any event, on any event. If you can get to the facial recognition, then you're not compromising the integrity of the event as well. Using RFID technology, within the badges as well.
Right. Look, I appreciate your time. I know you're busy, but I'm looking forward to the next 2 days at the summit and being able to learn more.
I'm honored to be here, and thank you so much for this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.